Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, March 8th meeting of the Lebanon Redevelopment Commission. Tonight we will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much, and Madam Clerk, if you would please note that all commission members are present this evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, guys. First item on the agenda, we are going to have 2 meeting minutes to approve. The first of which is going to be from the 2/8 meeting, which is our regular meeting minutes. And then we also have the 2/22 meeting for our special meeting that we held on February 22nd. I believe that can come in a single motion. Everyone should have received that via email today. I would entertain a motion.
What was the date on the first one?
2/8 and 2/22.
2/18, okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes for 2/18.
2/8.
2/8, I'm sorry. I thought 18 didn't sound right. 2/8 and 2/22.
Perfect. We have a motion on the table.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. That takes us on to our old business. Now I indicate no old business on our agenda. Any from the commission members? Perfect. So on to the new business. Item A is consideration of the First Amendment for the project agreement with Forza. And I believe Mr. Ben Bontrager has some information for us on that one.
Good evening, members. I will do my best to walk through this relatively quickly. I know many of you were able to hear a lot of this last week at a work session, so I will do my best to recap that discussion. Take a few minutes first just to kind of let you know how we got to this point. This Forza, the Brakeman project, has gone through several different iterations, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months. Certainly as we went into the throes of the pandemic last year, a lot of challenges to finance a building with retail space in it when there's no retail demand. So over the course of last year, the building was redesigned to reduce the amount of retail space in the building, add some additional residential to the building to make it something that was more financeable. So we did that over the course of last summer, rolled into the end of last year, getting to the point where we're about ready to get close on it right before Christmas, and then ran into some issues with the appraisal for the building in order to secure the construction loan, Forza's construction loan. And we went through a number of these issues last week. The primary issue was when the appraiser was reviewing the pro forma for the project, they looked at all the proposed revenue and expenses really that project just to determine in fact that they are going to make the money they say they're going to make and they're going to be able to pay back their loan. And what they determined is that the projections on revenue, in particular the lease per square foot, were higher than what the appraiser thought they would be able to get. As we've talked about a number of times, there's really no good comps in Lebanon for a project like this. So they went with the best comps they could find in terms of other apartment complexes and used those for comps, and felt like they needed to revise their projections on revenue to lower that revenue projection. What that essentially did is you couple that with the fact that we were also requiring a certain minimum tax payment. Now that the project didn't have the value sufficient to secure the construction loan they need to build the project, so we went from having, or I guess we created a gap of about $650,000 on the project that couldn't be closed with that construction loan anymore based on the current parameters of the project. So Forza came to us after the first of the year to look at different ways that we might be able to make those adjustments. The first thing they said is the appraiser felt like once the building is constructed that it would appraise for about $3.9 million. Again, based on comps that were about as comparable as you could get to a project like this. As I've suggested before, the last time we had a mixed-use building that was built in Lebanon, it was 100 plus years ago when the downtown was originally built. So we don't have a good comp, a mixed-use building like this. Frankly, there's really not anything in Boone County that comps to a new construction project like this. So the comps we felt like that's actually a very conservative estimate, and we feel like it might be higher than that, but those are numbers we have to go by. So the first go at this was that we needed to lower our minimum taxpayer agreement such that it reflected that assessed value of 3.9 rather than what we were projecting significantly higher than that. What that did then is reduce the amount of money that the RDC and the CDC were going to have to pay the bank loan that we were going to secure. So the city's loan amount was essentially being dropped from 2.1 million down to 1.1 million in terms of our ability to repay based on the amount of money that was going to be coming in from the minimum taxpayer agreement. Forza was also able to take a look at their construction numbers and find some savings there, but in essence we went from a $650,000 gap to an $850,000 gap because the city's contribution to the project had to be lower because of that minimum taxpayer agreement. So then Forza then went back and looked and said, what other ways can we save money on the construction side and also increase some money on the loan or investment side. What they've done is they've reduced the amount of the contingency from $500,000 to $350,000, which lowers the overall project cost by another $150,000. They've also looked at some of their investments, and their investment group is willing to increase their size of investment from $750,000 to $1 million. And then Forza is also reducing their developer fee by $150,000, again creating some additional savings there. What they need then is for the city to increase the size of our loan or cash incentive in the project from that $1.1 million that can be secured based on the tax revenue to $1.4 million. So in working with Baker Tilly in terms of confirming some of my estimates, if you look at the $1.4 million loan, I worked with the bank on the terms. It's a 25-year loan at about 4%, and that equates to an annual payment of about $88,500. If you look at the $3.9 million assessed value, that equates to an overall tax payment of about $79,000. But if you account for the existing assessed value, the base assessed value of the property, and then also reduce the tax, our property tax by the school referendum, the overall tax payment of $79,000, the actual TIF increment becomes about $65,000, what Baker Tilly said. So we've got a gap of about $23,000 between what the bank loan amount annually is going to need to be for that $1.4 million loan and what the tax increment is going to be collected from the project specifically. The one thing that we talked about last week at the work session, two things may likely happen after this building is constructed. One, they are very likely going to be able to secure the rent rates that they had projected ahead of time that were reduced by the appraiser. I'm sure they're hoping that they can get the tax or the lease rates that they're proposing to get from that project. And two, we feel relatively confident that this is going to assess for higher than the $3.9 million that the appraiser had proposed or had projected. The construction cost is about $6.4 million, so it's very likely that this may assess for more than that $3.9 million. Again, we don't have a good comp to say, well, the last building like this, the construction cost was X and the assessed value is Y. What the one most recent project I did look at, it was actually a medical office building on South 11th Street. Their construction cost is about $4.2 million. And it just ended up assessing for about $4.05 million. So it ended up assessing for almost the value of their construction costs. And the assessor's office does look at information in our building permits to determine those values. So they will look at the plans, number of units, size of units, et cetera, but then they also look at the information on the building permit. So that construction cost is going to be on the building permit of $6.4 million, and they also use that as they determine those values. So we have a reasonable expectation that assessed value may end up being higher than that. We just won't know that until the building's constructed and they assess the building. Not much we can do to gain any more confidence ahead of time in terms of what that assessed value would be. But I did calculate, in order to cover the cost of that $1.4 million loan, we would need an assessed value probably about between 5.2 and 5.4 million, which is still quite a bit less than the overall construction cost. So we do have some room there where the assessed value could be higher, we have enough money in that loan to pay off that loan payment and still be less than the overall construction cost. So it is a possibility that we do end up in a good situation there. But what's before you tonight then is essentially the worst case scenario, if you will, if you're willing to call it worst case. The developer is committing to a minimum tax payment of $79,000. So we do know that we are guaranteed to have at least that $65,000 to pay off that loan. We know it will not be any less than that. But we're also agreeing then in that agreement that we will secure that $1.4 million loan. The CDC will, and then the RDC will commit to making a grant to the CDC in the amount of $88,500 or whatever the actual amount is in order to pay back that loan through the bank. So that's the gist of the amendment to the agreement that's before you here tonight is the details that I just explained there. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any. And I do have representatives from Forza here. They can go further into some of the financial details. We've also talked with them over the last few days. If this agreement were to move forward, how quickly could they get to the point where they're ready to start construction? So they have some information on that too. So if you have any questions for me, if you have any further questions for them, we'd all be happy to answer anything you got.
That was a lot of weeds.
Yeah, we're deep in the weeds at this point.
So just to clarify for those watching at home and in the audience, essentially on this project, this board committed a $2.1 million bond. That in this amended agreement is dropping to $1.4 million based on assessed values and potential assessed values. With that drop, there could be a potential shortfall in the tax payments of about $23,000 a year. So for that $700,000 drop in bond amount, we could face a potential $23,000 shortfall each year on the bond payments. So that is what is being considered in amendment number one. So with that kind of summary, any questions for Ben or representatives from Forza?
And I will also point out, that's, the assessed value is not going to stay the same for 25 years either. So even if it does only assess for $3.9 million, that's for year one of 25. And assessments are likely to go up every year. So even if we have a gap at $23,000 in year one, it's going to slowly close. But I do think the gap is going to be smaller than that from the start. Possibly not even have a gap, but that assessed value is going to continue to rise over time. And most likely at the end of the 25-year period, we're going to at least break even, if not be ahead of the game by that point.
And real quick, just a clarification on my comments, it's not an actual bond, it's a pledge of TIF.
It is a bank loan, yes.
Pledge of TIF, so.
Ben, your last statement was kind of answering my question before I ask it. It was worst-case scenario.
Yes.
And so we know that the value is going to increase, at least we have a pretty good confidence it's going to increase over that period of time. So we have to deal with that in the school world as well, when we levy as well. Worst-case scenario, knowing that, tax rates will be feathered in over time, but you have to advertise the worst-case scenario. So
Yes.
appreciate that.
And the other thing I didn't mention in here, in addition to the guaranteed minimum payment of $79,000, they were also agreeing that if there's any assessed value up to $5.7 million, they would not appeal that assessment. So in case it assesses for $5.4 million, they won't have the ability to appeal that, and then they will be making a tax payment that would end up paying that loan amount. So we do have the ability then, if it ends up being higher than what's being projected, 3.9 million, then that'll be there also to make that payment.
I have a question on the parking lot on 39, across the street. Is that in the original construction cost?
Yes, that is in these construction costs.
Any other questions from the commission? Any questions or comments from the audience, Forza, any other interested parties? So with that being said, I believe we can entertain the motion on amendment number one for the project amendment with Forza CRE.
I'll make a motion, we approve Amendment 1 to the project agreement with Lebanon Redevelopment Force LLC, and authorize Corey's signature and the mayor's signature. Rob, do you need to review this? You've reviewed this before? Yeah.
I've provided comments. I know they came back this afternoon, so we can review it just one last time before.
Okay, subject to Rob's review.
All righty, so we have a motion for approval, signature authorization to myself or Mayor Gentry, subject to final legal review. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Just thank you, appreciate the consideration. We'll have to set up a special meeting of the CDC. Corey will get to be involved in that to also approve this amendment. At that point, we'll be going full speed ahead. And I don't know if maybe Forza, do you want to just give a couple quick comments on what you think in terms of project schedule now that we've got this? You want to?
Oh, yeah, my name's Travis.
Yeah. Hey, Travis, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Chief Strategy Officer. So we're looking at probably 2 to 3 months, looking at just because we've got to get through closing and some final nits and details on phase 1 environmental and on survey and take down of the properties, the real estate transaction and those different types of things and negotiation of the construction contract. So we're moving as fast as we can. I think the project's in a lot better position than it was recently. So we certainly appreciate everybody's time.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good deal. So that wraps up that conversation. Now we're going to move on to B, which is with our folks looking at a facade grant. Now this is listed as 5 individual properties, and I believe Derek Warren is going to give us some details on this.
Good evening, Commission. Yes, Corey, you are correct. This is a single owner with 5 different properties in our district who is applying for roof grants this evening. I am happy to go through them however you would like me to. I know you already have this information. For the addresses on the application tonight is 108 North Lebanon Street, 112 West Washington Street, 117 North Meridian Street, 119 North Meridian Street, and 124 North Lebanon Street. The applicant did provide 2 estimates for each building. At first glance, they're not necessarily the same type of roof application, the same type of material. I did do a pretty extensive amount of research on the applications that have been submitted by 5-Star Commercial Roofing, who provide a little bit of an alternative compared to the typical flat roof application, which is a more of a heavy plastic rolled out material that's the seams are heat treated and sealed. 5-Star does more of a rubberized roofing. They both come with 20-year guarantees. They're 20-year life expectancy. The best way to describe the rubberized roofing is probably born something out of Flex Seal that you all see on TV. I think that type of application, that type of product has opened up an entire new way of thinking about how to apply rubberized systems. So with that, the 5-Star Roofing is very comparable to an EPDM application as far as life expectancy and protection of the roof. And a lot of credit to the applicant. The 5-Star rubberized roofing is also a more cost-effective application as well. So same life expectancy, same coverage there for all of them. So how do you want me to break this down for you, since there's 5 of them?
If you could go by each one, and I guess, and just clarifying for me, when I looked at them, these are only for roofs. There's no
Correct.
windows, facades, doors,
Nope.
Frontage, back, alley, okay.
Nope. So last, 2020 did a number on everybody's memory. I can't remember if it was 2020 or late 2019. We did amend the facade grant language in the resolution to only reimburse 30% for a roof application. Previous to that, they did fall within the scale of the original resolution. So we pulled roofs out, isolated them, And again, they only qualify for 30% reimbursement. So I'm happy to go down the list here. So 108 North Lebanon Street. Five Star Roofing, as you saw in your packet provided for tonight's meeting, did provide a discount if they were to get all 5 roofs. So that's what I based my number off of, since it was the lowest number. That was with the discount. 5 Star Roofing on 108 North Lebanon Street. Low bid, $8,850. Rojas Roofing, high bid of $24,025. Excuse me. The low bid at $8,850 qualifies at 30% for $2,655 from the commission. 112 West Washington Street. 5 Star Roofing. Low bid at $33,750. High bid is Elbert Roofing at $49,860. The low bid at 30% reimbursement from the RDC qualifies for $10,125. 117 North Meridian Street. Low bid is 5 Star Roofing at $11,137. High bid is Rojas Roofing at a number of $35,992. Low bid at $11,137 qualifies for a 30% reimbursement of $3,341.10. 119 North Meridian Street. Low bid, again, 5 Star Roofing, $8,685. High bid is Rojas Roofing at $36,186. Low bid at $8,685 qualifies for a 30% reimbursement of $2,605.50. And last but not least, 124 North Lebanon Street. Low bid is 5 Star Roofing at $15,225. High bid is Elbert Roofing at $22,720. Low bid at $15,225 qualifies for a 30% reimbursement of $4,567.50. So if my math is correct, and I did use a calculator, the total application amount reimbursement from the RDC for all 5 properties is $23,294.10.
Sorry, just finishing jotting down some numbers.
Sure, no problem.
One quick question for myself. So 124 North Lebanon Street, is that the, what I would call the Net Tech building?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have in this package the Net Tech building, Royal Title, the Knights of Pythias building, which is the optometrist and the butcher shop. You have what's formerly known as the Merle Norman building, and Sampson Leather as well. To give you all landmark names that I think we're all familiar with.
That helps, thank you.
Yes, it does. Commission members, any questions currently?
Yeah, I have a question for Derek. Unless I've mistaken, I know you said that either in 20 or 19 we amended it. Because I know the facade is not the roof. And I mean, either we're going to have to change our whole thing about a facade and make some other new, because I'll guarantee you, I didn't recognize it when we moved it if I was here.
Sure.
Since I'm new.
Yes, we talked about this pretty extensively for the last, I don't know, since 2018 probably, since the original resolution was adopted. And as I mentioned, roofs were included as a facade component, even though it's not visible from the street. At the end of it all, if you don't have protection from the envelope, a leaking roof, you're sinking money into a ship that eventually is going to hit the bottom of the ocean floor. Doesn't make much sense to partner with a business owner and shove $100,000 into pretty looking windows if we can't protect the water coming into the building. And again, at the beginning of 2018, it was included in the original category, and what we found was a lot of those, scale, excuse me, and what we found was a lot of these roofs were falling into a category where the RDC was paying nearly all of the roof. So a couple of those snuck through, and we decided, look, okay, we all acknowledge that a roof is a very important component of the building, but it's not fair for the RDC to pump the majority of that money into it. So we were back and forth on where that number landed between Caleb and Sierra, who were on the board at the time. They kind of spearheaded this conversation, and we felt like 30% was a good compromise at the time.
It doesn't make any sense to me, because facade is the outer edge.
The outside of the building, correct?
I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Understood.
I don't disagree, and I recall those discussions when Sierra was hearing that. I struggle a little bit with putting that much money without any potential indication of any change to the front or the facade. And we've done windows, and we've done, several different things. And I agree with your statement about a roof, whether it's residential or commercial. But five different properties I think we're looking at.
Correct.
And was there any indication that there would be any work done? But some of them are high visibility on the square kind of properties,
Sure.
as you've described it. Thank you.
It is a discussion I've had with the property owner, and I'm certainly not going to make any promises, but he is here tonight if you'd like to speak with him.
Who's the property owner at 119 North Meridian?
They're all the same. It's EMJ Enterprises. I'm sorry, EMJ Properties LLC, Gary Katona.
Derek, do we have any history on these specific properties with RDC grants? Have we done other facade grants on these properties?
These properties have not received any other HPC approvals or RDC grant dollars since the inception of the district.
Okay.
These properties have not received any facade grants
Correct.
before?
Even back to the beginning.
Okay, so they have not received anything to improve the outside looking at it. And I understand your comments of the outside and the roof, and if we don't take care of the roof, we wasted all that money on the outside. But the problem is we haven't done anything on the outside to make any improvements. Here, it looks like they just need a roof, and they went through the process and it doesn't look like they're trying to do anything else on the outside.
And again, I think the applicant does have plans, but I can't speak to those plans, and I'm not going to make any promises.
I mean, if this was part of a plan to do something on the outside, it makes it a little easier to talk about, but this is just a plan to fix the roof.
Sure.
And they knew they had that problem before,
No, I understand completely.
so.
Yep.
Mr. Katona, do you have any desire to approach the commission or speak to the commission? Come on up. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Sure, and thank you for your time. As Derek mentioned, this is the beginning of putting any money back into these buildings, now that we are in a position to financially pay for it and hope for some reimbursement. We've also got plans for the Net Tech building, as you guys call it, across from Arnie's, to do a facade. That will be coming later on this month. We're in the process of trying to find architects to get a rendering and go through the steps and come up with something. So that will be our next project after the roofs. But as Derek said, there's no point in doing anything until the roofs are fixed. We're also looking at doing windows and doors on the other buildings. So this is the first step in a multi-process plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
So when you address the Net Tech building, I think that's of most interest to myself personally, just from an aesthetic standpoint. So, that's been on the square, it's been in its present look for quite some time. So, as you talk about addressing that hopefully here very shortly, is that going to be a complete overhaul of the facade, or What's the scope of that?
Yeah, that's my plan, is to go back to that whole front of that building. And I mean, as soon as I can get somebody, if you guys have people to recommend, I'm more than open to discussing it with anybody. But yeah, we're ready to take steps, within a week. I
Okay,
mean, that fast.
okay. While we have Mr. Katona up here, what other questions from the commission?
No, I'm glad to hear that we're thinking about doing something in the front, because that's one of my concerns, as Mr. Robertson explained. But a timeline would have been nice to have, I think, if, in conjunction. The total request is not outside of what we've approved for facade, but I do struggle with the fact that we're just looking at roofs right now. This is me personally, I'm speaking only as one commissioner. If this were combined in conjunction with your proposal for, say, the facade, even on the Netflix building or some of the other properties you have on the square, I think I would be much more inclined to consider this in a favorable light. And if you're looking for, you say 30 days out, we're hitting the spring. Is it fair to you to ask you to come back with your proposal of timelines for the facade improvements in conjunction with the roof replacement? And we look at that as a packet?
These roofs are in need of repair now. We've actually held off to get financially stable to make sure that we can put an investment in them. So anytime and we've actually gone past the point, because as you can see, there's a big discrepancy from the other quotes that we've received. And we've even had some that are even higher than that. I've been searching for 2 years to get somebody to come in with a repair bill, a replacement bill that's feasible. We've been getting quotes for $80,000. I think one of them was even over $100,000 per building, not total for these. And that just wasn't doable. So with a lot of due diligence, we found something that we believe can solve the issue with the roofs. And as Derek said, that's the first step. There's no point in coming to you for a facade grant when we don't have a building that can withstand the rain and the weather. So I understand if you want to see something done with that building, I do too. And I will make a commitment that the NetTech building will be the next step that we go once the roofs are completed. But without the roofs being completed, we can't go anywhere. Because nobody wants to push money into something that doesn't hold water, as they say. So I think you can see the path of logic that I'm presenting. And we're all in agreement, let's fix up the other building. I don't have any problem committing to that, as long as I can get a commitment to you, from you.
And I think Dr. Taylor asked for a commitment to you as to when you're going to do that, the extra work. When you do the outside on the facade, if you're going to say you're going to commit to that by May 1st or April 1st or June 1st, something like that, but if you say it's going to be 3 years from now, that makes a whole difference.
No, sir, I'm planning on getting, within a few weeks, trying to get quotes and the architect going on that, on the facade, not on the roofs. Right? I'm trying on doing the roofs now and immediately go into getting whatever you guys need as well as us to get that facade up and going. I'm hoping to have it done, by June, not get started by June.
And I appreciate that. I just, point of clarification for me, the facade grant's not for the RDC, the facade grant's for the city, as you well know. And so those properties are foundational keystone properties on the square, and we've made a lot of gains there. So I understand your predicament. I hope you can understand voicing some of my concerns that we just do roofs, we get them covered, and then nothing else happens on the front. I have some concern about those folks that do want to do some facade or some windows, and I understand windows and doors, and we've approved windows and doors. I'm looking at Derek, and I think we've done that in the past, and I endorse that. I guess I'm a little, I just would like to see a little more clarification as to where the full project's going.
On a specific building or on the NetTech building?
Well, to be quite honest, on all five. I mean, we're doing 5 roofs, okay? And it's the 30% reduced, and I know that's what we agreed to, and we're there. I'm struggling with, if we're just going to do roofs and we don't see any other changes, and good intention is still there, then we're just putting money into the roofs with no guarantee that we see changes to how those keystone buildings on the square will work into the total total picture that we have for improvements, so.
We've just remodeled the upstairs of the Net Tech, all 3 apartments that are up there. We've got 3 more apartments, the Merle Norman Leather Shop area. We've got those in construction right now. So those are all the ones on Net Tech are just about completed. I'm actually taking applications on one of the apartments right now. So we have moved forward with this. But again, I can't get people in there with a roof that leaks. So that has to come first. But we've already committed to the inside, and that work is done. You can come out and visit. I'd be glad to show it to you. So those are already done. So we have made our commitment to that. The facade will be the next step on that. We're also doing the inside of the buildings over at the Merle Norman on Meridian Street. So that is our commitment. It's physically being done now.
So physically, you're already working on the inside?
Absolutely.
Mayor, I believe Mayor has something to say as well. And then, Mr. Sampson, do you have a comment? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a real quick comment. I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you guys have before you tonight. But I do believe there is a reason that when Eric and I were forming this program, right? There's a reason we put in roofs in the grant program. Preserving these buildings is our number one priority, and I think that's make sure it has a firm roof, or make sure it has a watertight roof is a key first step to preserve these buildings long term. Garrick talked about all the improvements he's making inside, and I agree with you. I want to see us continue to move forward and see these buildings come back to their former glory. I want to see that too. But I do think it's a good first step for us to move forward tonight, hopefully, on these grants, because I do think it at least it secures the building, and it allows the downtown to continue moving forward by making sure these buildings aren't going to go anywhere. Because I think we do know the impact water can have and what it does for a building, damaging it long term. That we don't want to get. When we tore down the Montgomery Ward building, right, we had 18 inches of water in the basement because it wasn't watertight. So these roofs are critically important, and I think tonight's a great first step. I know Gary and I, we've been talking about this for a long time, right? And I think even convincing Gary to participate in this program was a process to get here. So I do think tonight's a good first step, and I think it's a good show of faith on both parties to start the restoration and the reinvigoration of these buildings. So I would appreciate your support on this, because I do think it's a good first step for us, but I 100% agree with where your guys are coming from of you do want to see progress, and we want to see that too. So we'll continue working with Gary and his partners to make sure that these projects do continue moving forward long term. So any questions for you, Commission? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further from me?
Just one quick comment here. So as we kind of look back at the history of this, so as Derek mentioned, from the inception, which I know was at least 6 years, right? So we've had this program out for at least 6 years. I know Dr. Taylor and myself were involved even back at that point. I know these two gentlemen were on council at that point as well. And we haven't seen that commitment from these buildings. You made a statement tonight that you've made renovations in the upstairs, but you're not going to rent them out if the roof's leaking. I'm not real positive why we do renovations before we get a roof put on, so that's a different concern. I think, as Mayor said, we are in a position to let's give and take here. Let's make some commitments, but this is the time to do it. You see the construction going on in the downtown core. There's a lot going on. We've approved stuff this evening in front of the Board of Works. A lot of those buildings are getting love. I love what Sampson's doing. They've expanded into some space. They're doing the renovations. It's going to look great in there. So, that's kind of my 2 cents on where we are today, where we've been to get to this point, and hopefully we can rely on your commitment to take that next step. Commission, any other comments?
I guess my only concern is I understand the situation, and I would like that there was a commitment that, you would be back in the next 3 or 4 months or whatever with plans and renovations and so forth, and went through the historic group and so forth, as opposed to waiting a year from now and come back or 2 years from now and come back and want to do something. I guess we want to make sure that there's a commitment, there's going to be something done. Yeah, we know you're going to work on the inside, and we know you got to fix the roof to get that fixed so you can do the work on the inside and make the inside right. But we're also looking at the outside as well. So I'd like to hope we've got a really good feeling that you will be putting something on the outside here soon. Try to make those commitments. Okay.
So hearing some of the comments, Dr. Milliman, do you
I
have
was
a?
just going to say, the owner is putting a 70% commitment in here.
Correct.
So, that speaks loudly to me. Also appreciate fighting the competitive bids, combining the 5 rooftops. You look at the difference in estimates on this. I think that shows a lot of due diligence on the owner's part. So those are my two comments.
So with the comments being made, Keith, you got one as well?
Yeah, I have one more question. I'm leaning toward agreeing to you, but I want to know from you what a date is when you're actually going to do this.
I'm sorry.
I want to know when you start. Are you going to start in June, July?
On the facade?
Yeah. No, the facade. Because,
I've got to get quotes, if you guys have it, I'm struggling to get anybody to respond.
well, I'm just saying is, at some point in time, if we go and do the roofs, and then you don't find someone for 2 years or 3 years, we've just gotten roofs for you for 3 years, and there's been nothing done on the facade. There has to be some kind of verbal or written commitment from you to this board, as I would see it.
I'm giving you my word right here to all of you, that, I'm trying to get somebody this week, once I get the roofs up and going.
Well, like I said, I'd feel better with a timeline on it.
April 1st.
He's subject to a contractor being available.
Well, I understand that.
So that's
But after he finds out where that is,
a little limit, I don't think.
So hearing some of the commissioners' comments, I kind of see 2 different avenues we could take here. So First Avenue would, of course, be to consider the facade grants as we see them, based on the 70-30 split. The other, based on the feedback of the commission, one thing you could consider would be to potentially table these items pending certain actions that you would request from the property owner, such as an engineering contract, an architectural contract, and then that way we are tabled on these facade requests until we have potentially that timeline that Keith is looking for and even Mr. Robertson.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Derek? My question to you would be, when an applicant comes to you with a facade request, and you have to go through the Historic Preservation Committee, correct? What's the process, what's the length of time,
Sure.
and so forth to get through all that before you get to us?
Yeah. I mean, I can talk to you. I think I have enough experience to talk realistically about timelines of these projects. And I can tell you that going from not having a designer on retainer to going to have facade renovation started by June 1st is not realistic. It's simply not. So the process itself, design work, is going to take some time. If a contract is even signed tomorrow, you'd be fortunate to have design completed and submitted by June, to be honest with you. I work with the applicants very closely to get into a ballpark where I feel it's likely that the Historic Preservation Commission will approve an application. Total facade renovations are a little bit more difficult, and there's quite a bit of detail to go over. But we certainly do provide the applicants with enough information to get within that ballpark. A complete renovation sometimes can take 2 HPC meetings to get to the point where you're hitting the bullseye. And there's 30-day submittal deadlines that go along with that. So you're realistically looking at probably approval from the HPC in all reality, by 1st of August. Maybe a little bit quicker, maybe July. Clock's ticking, so we've already missed the April deadline for filing. The May deadline is, the 1st of April, so forth and so on. So, in all reality, you're probably looking at an August
6 months
HPC
at least.
approval, and then you're coming back to the RDC in September for funding request. And at that point, approvals are in place, likely by fall, early to mid, maybe late fall. But then you're up against Mother Nature at that point, and getting a facade started is difficult. You added expenses, so you could potentially be looking at actually swinging hammers spring of '22.
Sure, okay.
And that's realistic. I mean, I don't want to deflate anybody. I don't want to deflate the applicant. I think going down that path is, you all are encouraging it. We've had several conversations. I've provided the applicant quite a bit.
Well, I didn't want us to be in a position where demanding him to have something in a month.
No.
And knowing it's not gonna happen.
That's not feasible. That's not feasible. I mean, honestly, if you're looking at improving the roofs, now is the time to improve the roofs. The rainy season is knocking on the doorstep, and if you delay it until you have facade application in front of you, you're gonna have 4, 5, 6 months go by.
Okay, I'm gonna ask another question. I'm assuming when we changed our rules in our facade grant, when we changed and added the roof in there, we did not specify the roof had to be tied to a facade project.
No.
Okay. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. We're not tied to a facade to the front or the side. The roof is separate by itself. So we're kind of in a pickle, I would say.
I think the application is submitted, meets all the criteria we put forth, and I think Derek does a good job in vetting that, so if he brought it to us. I'm just voicing my concern that, a roof is without question necessary, but a roof without additional activity to help the appearance of the building. And, and I again, appreciate the work inside, but that's revenue generation. That doesn't help to the outside of the building. But as the applications are submitted, I think everything's been in compliance and meet the guidelines of what we established and redefined 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
This version of the grant program has been around since January 1st of 2018 is when it started. We've had different versions over the years.
So I think that to that, the motion would be to approve as here. I always like to take a man at his word. I guess I'm still old-fashioned enough to think that's out there. But if the mayor and Derek have been speaking with the owner, and they've expressed their desire to see those changes, I guess part of me in this pandemic would like to believe that there's some good faith opportunity as well. But my concern was, especially, I had nothing against the properties or anything else, it's just a roof alone, I don't feel that warrants, without some consideration for additional work on the front. That's a structural issue, not a facade issue.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't disagree with you
I agree.
whatsoever.
And again,
I think we
Dan
just-
gives me his word, he gives me his word. I think April
We just have to
1st, I
trust-
appreciate your enthusiasm, but there's no way on God's earth you're gonna get anything done by April
Yeah, I
1st.
just meant that was to get a rendering going. I'm not talking about construction stuff.
Yeah.
So I think,
We trust that they're gonna work through it and hopefully come back to us someday.
In terms of getting a designer on retainer, though, would that be feasible by, say, our next meeting, for instance?
Tight.
Okay.
I don't think you're gonna just jump out there and sign the first one you come across,
Obviously, yeah.
So I think there's probably a little bit of a vetting process that has to happen. But we certainly have resources in our office that we can provide for historic architects and designers, other designers that building owners have used on the square. So we can have a list of 4 or 5 of them put together pretty quick, probably.
Right. So with that being said, I think we've had quite a bit of
Did
conversation.
Dr. Taylor make a motion a while ago?
I did, and I simply thought, I simply put my interpretation of the clarification of the point would be is, these 5 applications vetted by Derek, supported by the city, are applications that were within our purview to approve as submitted for the 30% reimbursement for $23,294 and change. And I think that's the motion that has to be put out there. I'm looking at the property owner who I've never met, giving me his word. So I'm going to, a fellow Lebanon citizen saying, I'm going to do this. And I tend to sit here and think, okay, I'll take you at your word.
So,
And we go with that.
so with those,
I'll second his motion.
hang tight. I don't believe he made an official first
No,
motion.
I did not make a motion.
And
I'm
then-
sorry.
giving you
So,
clarification of
Yeah.
what you asked.
Oh, okay.
I know where Corey was going, there was 2 venues. Do we table it and wait? But I
Right.
don't think, in my opinion, that's not what the statute or the guidelines that we have say. Says he submitted a valid grant application. It meets the guidelines, meets the critique of our city planners and engineers, meets the desires of our city government, so where's that?
I'll make a motion, we approve the grant application.
All 5?
All 5.
Perfect. So just to clarify there, we have a motion on the table, and that would be, if you can confirm for me, to approve the grant application as submitted for 108 North Lebanon Street, 112 West Washington Street, 117 North Meridian Street, 119 North Meridian Street, and 124 North Lebanon Street for a grant total of $23,294.10. With a head nod, we get, that is a yes on the first motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Should we do a roll call vote on this one, or would we like to?
Call, Mr. President.
All right, well, let's go ahead and just do a vote. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Mr. Katona, we would love to see you back as soon as physically possible, even if that just means an update to us that you've retained a designer and are moving forward on your properties.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that discussion on that topic, folks. Moving on to our favorite item of the evening, which is to pay our bills. So we do have claims that have been submitted to us, and I would entertain a motion to pay those.
I move we pay the claims.
We have a motion. Madam Clerk.
We were getting signatures, excuse me.
Mr. Campbell has motioned to pay the claims, and Mr. Robertson has seconded. With that, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Claims are paid. And lastly, we have an adjournment to entertain.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Mr. Robertson with the motion, and a second from Dr. Taylor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, and we are now adjourned. Thank you very much.